All right. I want you to imagine something with me for a second. It's one of the most bizarre and successful experiments in the history of online competition.
It's a classic, a legendary story in SEO circles.
It really is. So, picture this.
Yeah.
You are tasked with ranking #1 on Google for a really valuable, super specific search term. Think high stakes, local, something like rhinoplasty Plano.
A money keyword for sure.
Exactly. Now, instead of hiring some expensive professional medical writer, you decide to cheat. But not in the usual way, not by buying shady links.
No, something much stranger.
You do something totally absurd. You publish a web page where like 90% of the content is just meaningless placeholder text.
Yeah.
You know the stuff. Lorem Ipsum dolor sit.
The gibberish.
The gibberish. It sounds like a joke, right? Like trying to win a marathon by taking a helicopter.
I know.
Get this exact page, which was basically nonsense, Latin with some keywords dropped in. It didn't just rank. It ranked #1.
It beat real doctors, real clinics.
Our mission today is to dive deep into the science behind this legendary experiment by Kyle Roof. We're going to unpack his strategy, this idea of scientific SEO, and figure out how on earth he ranked a page that was structurally perfect, but to a human.
Completely meaningless.
Totally meaningless. And this isn't just about a loophole. It's about really grasping the deep mechanics of the search algorithm.
That's the key takeaway here. We need to move beyond that advice you always hear, that Google just ranks good content. Because this dive, it will fundamentally shift your understanding of that.
Okay.
The success of this Lorem Ipsum project, it shows that Google's algorithm at its core functions less like a librarian who's reading for quality and much more like a mathematician.
A mathematician.
A very precise one, looking for specific, quantifiable signals. So our goal here is to really understand the inputs that system is built to look for.
Okay, let's unpack that. We're going to start with the architect himself, Kyle Roof, and this whole philosophy he built, which is now automated in a tool called Page Optimizer Pro, or POP. What is the absolute core principle of this scientific SEO approach?
Well, the core idea is built on this foundation of just brilliant data-driven discipline. The premise is Google is not a mystery box.
Not magic.
Not at all. By ranking the current top 10 results for any search, Google has already shown you its hand. It's signaling exactly what combination of on-page factors it thinks are relevant for that specific query.
So the answer is already there.
It's already there. The SEO's job just gets a whole lot simpler. You stop guessing what Google might want, and you just start reverse engineering what's already working. You replicate the common denominators.
That makes perfect sense. It's like if you want to bake the cake that won the state fair, don't invent a new recipe.
Exactly.
You just analyze the winning cake's exact ingredient list.
Yeah.
And the key word they used for this test, it wasn't some easy, low-competition term, was it?
Oh, not at all. The keyword was rhinoplasty Plano. I mean, that's a highly competitive local term. It connects a very expensive surgical procedure to a specific affluent city in Texas.
The stakes were very real.
Absolutely. If this method could beat legitimate, high-budget medical sites for a query like that, well, it proved that the system's inputs, the mathematical signals, held just a tremendous amount of weight.
Regardless of the content quality.
Almost entirely, yes, at least in that initial phase.
Okay, so let's move from the philosophy to the actual data. The genius here seems to be in the meticulous math. How do you turn what the top 10 competitors are doing into a repeatable set of instructions?
Right. This is where we get into reverse engineering the recipe. The very first step was just this exhaustive automated analysis of the competition.
So just scanning those top 10 pages.
Meticulously quantifying every single structural element on those pages. The goal is to find the statistical averages, the ranges. You're looking for the common denominators of success.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because we're not just talking about, keyword stuffing. What exactly were they quantifying?
So many granular details. Things that define the page's digital blueprint. For instance, they tallied the exact number of times the primary keyword rhinoplasty Plano appeared on the page.
Not a range, but a specific number.
A statistically ideal number, yeah. And second, they measured the frequency of all the keyword variations and what we call LSI terms, latent semantic indexing terms.
Okay, LSI terms. Break that down for us.
They're just the related words that Google expects to see. If you're talking about rhinoplasty, Google expects you to also mention things like nasal surgery, postoperative care, surgeon, maybe cosmetic procedure.
Ah, the whole contextual cloud of words around a topic.
Exactly. The algorithm expects a certain ratio of those related terms to confirm that you're covering the topic comprehensively.
So it's not enough just to say rhinoplasty 10 times. You also have to mention recovery time maybe 3 times, and Plano, Texas 4 times.
Precisely. And critically, they tracked the placement of all these terms. Was the main keyword in the title tag? Was it in the main H1 heading? How many times in the subheadings, the H2s and H3s?
So location matters a lot.
Oh, it carries enormous weight. One instance in the H1, one instance in the first 100 words. These are huge structural signals.
So they've analyzed the competition, and now they have this detailed statistical blueprint for success, which leads to step 2, creating the mathematical recipe. The instructions for the writer must have been incredibly rigid.
They were purely mathematical. The plan completely removed any human qualitative judgment. It didn't say write compellingly about rhinoplasty. No, it delivered a precise command. The keyword rhinoplasty plano has to appear exactly 14 times. One of those has to be in the H1 tag. The related term Texases must appear 8 times, but only in the H2 tags.
It just turns content creation completely on its head. It's not about the art, it's about hitting a target list perfectly.
It's about math.
Which brings us to the most shocking part of this whole thing.
Yeah?
The proof of concept. Step 3, actually applying this recipe to Lorem Ipsum. Why use filler text? Why not just write some, minimally okay content?
Because using filler text was the entire point of the experiment. They had to isolate the variable.
The variable being structure versus quality.
Exactly. The hypothesis was, does Google rank based on mathematical signals or on semantic quality? By filling that perfect structural skeleton with irrelevant Latin text, they forced the algorithm to make a choice.
And I have to ask, weren't they worried that using Latin placeholder text would be just this immediate, obvious red flag for low quality, that they'd get penalized instantly?
You'd think so, but that's the critical insight here. The page they built was structurally perfect for a robot. It hit every single quantifiable metric they'd pulled from the top 10 pages.
To a human, it was gibberish.
Total gibberish. But for the algorithm, at least in that initial indexing phase, it was a bullseye. The algorithm was programmed to recognize that structure, not to deeply understand the meaning of every sentence.
Yeah, it's a revolutionary result. It tells us so much about how indexing works.
Right.
But it went deeper than just words on a page, right? They had to replicate more than just the content.
They did. Step 4 was replicating all the other technical and structural factors that contribute to authority. This is where on-page SEO meets site architecture.
Okay, so what does that mean?
A huge element was replicating the use of structured data schemas, schema.org markup. Since the Lorem Ipsum text itself was meaningless, they needed another way to tell the algorithm in machine language what the page was about.
So it's like a label on the outside of the box.
A perfect analogy. Schema provides that mathematical non-textual signal. It tells Google, this page is a service page, it's about plastic surgery, and it has an average rating of X. It basically substitutes the semantic relevance the Latin text was missing.
So the schema was the official ID tag the algorithm could trust, even if the content itself was nonsense.
Exactly. And they didn't stop there. They also replicated the site architecture that you see on high-ranking surgical practice websites.
Meaning they built out the pages.
Yes. They created supporting pages, a locations page, a contact us page, maybe a few other service pages. And yes, those pages were also filled with Lorem Ipsum.
They built an entire ghost ship of a website.
A mathematical ecosystem. By replicating the common structural footprint of an authoritative site, they signaled authority, even though the content was, garbage.
This brings us to the core question that I'm sure everyone is asking. Why on earth did this work? We hear constantly about Google's updates, like BERT and MU, which are supposed to be amazing at understanding natural language and nuance.
Right.
How did a structural blueprint full of gibberish just bypass all of that advanced technology?
I think what's so fascinating here is the trade-off that's inherent in how the algorithm works. The success of this method, it really highlights the immense, almost overwhelming weight of those directly controllable on-page signals.
The structure, the tags, the schema.
All of it. Especially in the initial ranking and indexing phase. You have to think about Google's job. It processes billions of pages every day.
It needs to be fast.
It has to be. It needs to categorize and assign an initial relevant score incredibly quickly. And while BERT and MU are brilliant at understanding what text means, they're often applied after the algorithm has already used the structural math to decide if the page is even a strong candidate in the first place.
So the structural signals are like the gatekeeper.
That's a great way to put it.
They get you the initial high relevant score, the
Yeah.
seat at the table. If you don't provide that perfect expected structural roadmap, Google doesn't even bother wasting its more sophisticated, expensive semantic engines to analyze your content deeply.
That is the key insight. If you give it a structurally perfect map, even if the territory it describes is nonsense, it gets a high relevance score because it perfectly matches the statistical profile of what Google has already decided is relevant for that search. The math provides the relevance.
And relevance is the ticket to ride.
It's the absolute prerequisite for ranking.
This has been a truly illuminating deep dive, so let's try to synthesize this for everyone listening. What does this all mean for how we should approach creating content?
We have to hold two truths at the same time. First, high-quality content, the stuff that humans actually want to read, is absolutely essential for user engagement, for conversions, and for long-term ranking.
Right, because that Lorem Ipsum page wouldn't last forever.
No way! User signals, like people clicking away instantly, a high bounce rate that would eventually demote it. Quality's for the long game.
But the experiment isolated that first fundamental hurdle, structure. The lesson seems to be that to even get discovered and initially ranked by Google, your content has to be structured in a way the algorithm can easily quantify.
It has to be.
So quality might determine if you win the war, but the structural math determines if you're even allowed to fight the first battle.
That's it exactly. Roof treated SEO not as an art, but as a rigorous science. By using data to reverse engineer the top 10, he just gave the algorithm exactly the signals it expected to see. That structure is the fundamental pillar. It's the minimum entry ticket into the top 10.
So the main insight we're left with is that the structure, the math of on-page factors, it's a fundamental pillar of indexing. And it operates, at least at first, pretty independently of deep semantic quality. You need the perfect container before the content inside even matters to the algorithm.
And here's a final thought for you to consider, something to connect this to your own life. The next time you're consuming information, maybe you're skimming a news article or reading a report, ask yourself this.
Okay.
Am I absorbing this because of the clear headlines, the bullet points, the perfectly organized layout, the structure? Or am I absorbing it because I truly read and understood every single complex sentence? The quality. You might find you're ranking information in your own mind based on its presentation far more often than you realize.
That is definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive, and we encourage all of you to continue exploring the knowledge we've unpacked today. We'll see you next time.